Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Welcome in to another YouTube live show here tonight. I am your friend, John Kurtz. Hello, friends. I don't know when I started doing Jim Nance. It's SEC Media Days this week, people. How excited are we to be hearing from all the greats? Greg Sankey, Paul Feinbaum, Lane Kiffin. They've all been drawing headlines this week, and isn't that just wonderful? It's all of our favorite characters wrapped into one. Just amazing. Anyway, I don't have a ton to pick at from SEC Media Days, at least as of yet. Maybe give me until Sunday. We'll see. But we do have some SEC related things to talk about, namely this fight going on between the Big Ten and the SEC, folks. This is heating up. Grab your popcorn. You know the GIF of the guy who just takes the popcorn and then reclines back, starts throwing it in his mouth. If you're a K-State fan, you might remember Bill Walker eating popcorn on the bench in the 2007 NIT. These are the vibes that we're talking about. These are the vibes that we're talking about when you've got the Big Ten and the SEC starting to get snippy with each other. And Brett Yormark is just sitting back and smiling, almost as if this master plan, R. Webb, you guys remember, R. Webb a couple of weeks ago said, hey, this kind of feels like a poison pill being delivered by Brett Yormark toward the SEC and Big Ten. Man, I tell you what, it seems like R. Webb's a smart guy. I've always said he's a pretty smart gentleman, and it seems like he may be right on that. So we're going to discuss Brett Yormark potentially playing the Big Ten and the SEC a bit here. Also, if you are somebody that has doubted both Cody Campbell's potential impact on the landscape of college sports, the Texas Tech multi-billionaire, or the ability and or follow through of Congress or the president, anybody in Washington to actually do something about college athletics, like make a dent, make a difference there, I think you should pay attention to this show because we have a little bit of news. And yeah, you guys see that third topic. You know that's a fun one. We got a report this week about one Nick Saban. Could he coach in the Big 12 someday? Nick Saban in the Big 12. Okay, we'll see. That's what I've got lined up for you today. Payson Cougar fan, you are 100%. I'm late to everything, man. Church is just one thing, but literally everything in my life. So, yes, I apologize for that. I'm trying to be better. I've always got an excuse. That's the thing, right? I would have been on time today, but my light was out of battery. So I had to go track down my other battery, which I still hadn't unpacked since media days. So anyway, you get the gist. You see how this all works together. Please do like the video. Please do subscribe to the channel. Both of those things help me immensely. They are totally free. Fill up the chat as well. If you guys give me some Big 12 hot takes, we should have time probably for some Big 12 hot takes at the end of the show. So super chat, if you want to guarantee your question or comment makes it on in the meantime, click the $sign below the chat box in order to do that. But I may just be getting to random Big 12 hot takes at the end of the show if we have some extra time. We shall see. I've got like four videos I still need to get your way from Big 12 Media Days that I haven't dropped yet. It's just hard when I'm clipping out the show and getting everything. So I've got to do that. So I figured if I only have 3 main segments today, that's probably okay. I've got John Wilner to get to you from the Wilner Hotline. Famous character, infamous character from the Big 12, Pac-12 saga. Great dude, very insightful when it comes to college athletics. And he's somebody that sees the wisdom in what Brett Yormark is doing right now. We talked a lot about that. Plus, I've got Brian Santiago, the athletic director at BYU, and Kalani Sitake. I've got those interviews that I need to bring back out. Jeremy, I like it. Yeah, the light switches, man. Poor light switches. They are gone. You know, actually, Jeremy, I thought about you and I thought about the light switch situation when I was at my grandparents' house the other day, because there are light switch covers in there that look like they were made in probably like the 70s or the 80s. And it says Wildcats turn me on, Jayhawks turn me off. I may have mentioned those before, but I got to see it in person again the other day on the weekend of the 4th. So anyway, I'm rambling a bit here. Please subscribe to the Open for Business Big 12 newsletter. It has been a big week for the Open for Business Big 12 newsletter because I asked the players, where's the toughest place to play in the Big 12? I dropped the first part of the anonymous player survey with that included, and there were some banger quotes and it was a total runaway. A total runaway. And let me just say, if you're a BYU fan, you're going to want to go read that. OFBnews.com. It's OFBnews.com to get subscribed, or click the link in the description of this video. Couple of ways you can get hooked up with the Open for Business Big 12 newsletter. Next up, you're going to see who the players picked as the Big 12 champ. Pretty tight race. We've got best Big 12 quarterback. I've got some wild quotes about the craziest thing a coach has tried to do to get them to transfer to their school. So there's a bunch of good stuff that's going to trickle out in the coming weeks in Open for Business. So OFBnews.com. Once again, to get the hookup on that. Now, this is what I'm talking about. This is what SEC Media Days is all about. Kent says, as an LSU fan, I like your show and discussions. Kent, my man, can I admit to you, Kent, that I actually really like LSU. Like that, they are very fun school to watch, follow. Like that to me is like the best of SEC football. LSU, that environment, that's top of my college football bucket list. I would love to go there. One of my favorite teams to play with in NCAA. Like just growing up, that was, you looked at it, it's like, man, LSU football is sexy. So I have to admit that, Kent. I have to admit that. But I will do it just for you. Ooh, it looks like we're going to start the show before I get into this Big Ten SEC fight. We're going to start the show with a hot take from Clint. Clint says, hot take, Houston Cougars finish in the top 5 of Big 12 football. Willie Fritz is the man. That's another interview that I probably should get to you guys. It aired on a live stream that I did at Big 12 Media Days, but I haven't clipped it yet. I did talk to Willie Fritz one-on-one at Big 12 Media Days. Enjoyed it as always. I love that guy. He actually grew up very close to where I'm sitting right now in the Kansas City area. That's a hot take for sure. It is definitely hot. I think they will be better. I think Houston probably goes bowling this year. But in the Big 12, where Arizona State went from worst to first last year, went from 3-9 to Big 12 champs, damn near beating Texas in the playoff, I certainly can't say that that's impossible. I think Connor Wegman elevates their ceiling significantly because, let's be honest, what was the biggest issue with Houston football last year? Did not have an offense and didn't have any kind of consistency at quarterback at all. So breaking it down at a very rudimentary level like that, I would think Willie Fritz is still going to have a defense, even if he lost Shieldwood. I would think their defense is still going to be pretty good, and they'll be much better at quarterback, or at least have the potential to be much better at quarterback. Their ceiling has raised quite a bit there. So that's what you would be banking on, is that, yes, Connor Wegman is a stud, and he realizes that potential, and the defense stays stingy. That's the formula, I think, at Houston. You've got a high floor, certainly, with Willie Fritz as the head coach. I would say that. So I like it, Clint. That's good. This is how you do it, because I didn't ask for it. Like, I'm not asking for something that I would be like, oh, yeah, 100% agree with that. That's great. No, it's a hot take. Like, if it's going to be a hot take, then it's got to get me thinking a little bit and going, I don't know about that. So very well done, Clint. Very well done. You can hit me with some more Big 12 hot takes throughout the show. Okay. Let's get to the Big Ten SEC fight, everybody. Big Ten SEC fight. Oh, by the way, John Kurtz-4 on Venmo. If you're not watching live and you want to drop me a line there, hit me up with a question or comment. I will lead off the next show with it. Okay. I told you guys, our web said this a few weeks ago, and I agreed with it. Brett Yormark seems like he's poison pilling the Big Ten and the SEC by introducing the 5+11 playoff plan. You may have scoffed. You may have laughed. It sure looks like it's working right now with the latest report that we have to talk about today. It may have saved a chance for the Big 12 to actually play Big 10 and SEC schools in the non-con. It's given the Big 12 a best of both worlds playoff situation with what it looks like the playoff format is heading toward. And most importantly, it's got the Big 10 and the SEC really snippy with each other. It has broken up the bromance that was blossoming between the two conferences, which was a major threat to everybody that's not in the Big 10 or the SEC. So frankly, there are probably some people that should be thanking Brett Yormark and Jim Phillips, for that matter, for jumping right on board with this. I like this. It's kind of, there was the meme, I reference memes a lot here, but there's the meme of the little girl standing outside the house that's on fire, and she kind of has like a sly little smile. I feel like that's where Brett Yormark is at right now. I feel like that's him. You're like, hey, look what's happening here. Okay. So it has been reported, multiple times over, Big 12 and ACC came up with the 5+11 playoff format. basically to just keep from getting steamrolled with the 4-4-2-2 plan that was going to give 4 auto bids to the Big Ten and the SEC, and then 2 apiece for the Big 12 and the ACC. And the SEC mostly latched on to that, particularly the coaches. Seemed like SEC admins were on board with the idea of 4-4-2-2 because they could do the scheduling agreement with the Big Ten. They could also get those playing games at the end of the year, which means they would make more money. But the coaches were like, hey, that seems like a lot to have to do a play-in game there. We would dominate the more at-large bids that there are. Let's do that. The Big Ten's hated the idea from the get-go. They do not like it at all. And it's really turned these two leagues against each other. The reporting back and forth over the last month and a half since the SEC really started to jump on board with this Yormark and Phillips supported idea has been that, man, the Big Ten seems upset. If you go look at Big Ten Twitter right now, Big Ten Twitter seems upset. You are seeing a lot more sniping back and forth now between SEC and Big Ten. Now, the Big 12 has done some of that as well. Brett Yormark kind of, we'll say, took a veiled shot at Tony Petitti at Big 12 Media Days at his press conference last week when he said, look, we're not trying to be professional sports. We don't need to be professional sports. And Tony Petitti is the guy that seems to most embody that sort of attitude right now. But it has set up an environment where there's no progress really being made on this. And everybody now seems resigned to the fact that we're going to go into 2026 with a 12-team playoff instead of a 16-team playoff. And I know you might roll your eyes a little bit and be like, well, first of all, John, what's the news with this? I'm getting to that. But second of all, how big of a deal is that really? I mean, it was a foregone conclusion for months and months and months that it was going to be 4 auto bids. This was going to come through. It's just a matter of time. I mean, that was the way everybody had positioned it and acted about it. If you would have told John 4 to 6 months ago, hey, you're going to get a 12-team playoff in 26, and who the hell knows beyond? It could stay there. I would have said, no way, you're crazy. Obviously, everybody's getting steamrolled here by the Big Ten and the SEC, but that has not happened. And the latest report comes from Brett McMurphy of On3, who says the Big Ten will not back off its preferred college football playoff format, guaranteeing the league 4 automatic qualifiers unless the SEC decides to add a 9th conference game, sources told On3. Quote, this is a quote from the source, quote, there's no way Tony moves off 4 AQs, that being Tony Petitti, the commissioner of the Big Ten. So this is in no way shocking news. I mean, this is really just a more firm affirmation of everything we've seen reported lately and the way the Big Ten has publicly positioned itself. But this is definitely the most definitive way we've seen it stated in a public report. And it's big time confirmation that we know how the Big Ten feels about this, and they're digging their heels in. They're not going to just roll over for the SEC because now you've introduced this. Look, the Big Ten and the SEC have kind of been working together for a while because they're the power brokers. They hold all the cards and everything, both figuratively and literally in the language of the College Football Playoff Memorandum of Understanding. They hold all the cards. They had started meeting together. It became a bromance. They're working together. Hey, we need to shape the future of college athletics. We got to do this ourselves. But these are also 2 massive conferences with massive egos and lots of different massive egos within those conferences that all have to be massaged. And if you all of a sudden aren't getting what you want and you're used to getting basically everything you want, which both of these leagues are right now, you're not going to be too thrilled with whatever the resistance is. And yes, Big 12 ACC may have introduced this, but the real resistance is the SEC because they are the other piece of this that can actually make a difference in the future, actually hold decision-making power in the future over this. So now the Big Ten's ego is bruised. The Big Ten is like, wait, hold up, no. Now, they would tell you this is all sound reason decision-making for practical purposes, but make no mistake, a big part of this is ego too, and symbolism of we can't let ourselves get pushed around by the SEC. We can't do that. We fancy ourselves the big bully. We've won the last 2 national championships. That's us. So why should we be sitting around here bowing down to the SEC? we've got a monster league. We've got the biggest league out there. We are sea to shining sea with our schools. Why do we need to bow down to the SEC over anything? You've been able to play these two powerful egos against each other if you are Yormark by introducing this playoff format. I cannot understate how we'll see what it means in the end. Maybe they rally, maybe they find some way to, but together they were a powerful force, especially when they were working together. And if they're on the same page, I mean, good luck trying to do anything to stop them. But you've now gotten them off the same page. And who knows how far those issues will lead? Who knows how far things can crack and splinter now that this is happening? And I think it's great for everybody else involved. You do not want them working together, especially at a time when Cody Campbell is kind of circling like a shark in the water here. I can introduce some ideas that are going to be better for everybody involved in college athletics instead of just two conferences. I can save Olympic sports. I can save women's sports. I can do some. I've got the president's ear. Congress is starting to worry about this. All of these things that can be changing at this time with so much that's not stable and so much that could change. You don't want the Big Ten and SEC in total lockstep together. Now, the other part of this obviously is, will the SEC move to a 9-game conference schedule? The Big Ten, I think would say, okay, fine. If you move to a 9-game conference schedule, we'll do 5 plus 11. But they don't want to be at a competitive disadvantage in their eyes with the SEC only playing 8 conference games, having that extra game in November where they play directional FCS state, and everybody across the league basically does that. They get a little bit of a break. And the Big Ten's like, hey, that's BS. The SEC, meanwhile, turns around and says, yeah, you get a lot of those breaks throughout the year. They're called Purdue, and most years except last year, Indiana and Northwestern, at Nebraska for the last decade. You guys get a lot of those weeks. We don't have those in the SEC. So this is the fight, right? This is the fight. But the SEC does not want to go to 9 games unless they get assurances on what the at-large selection process is going to be like in the college football playoff. Because they think if they go to 9 games, it's an extra tough game. More teams will lose. They get less at-large bids. Like, this is the standstill, and it doesn't seem like anything is moving. And one other thing that I think is huge about this, what's brilliant about this for Yormark, I mentioned, obviously, the fact that you've now got these two fighting, but also if they're fighting, it means they're not joining up for a scheduling agreement. And that ties back into SEC's not going to 9 conference games. They're not having 4 auto bids where then they can schedule as many tough Texas, Ohio State type of non-conference games as they would like to with no fear of missing out on playoff bids. If that were going to happen, suddenly the SEC has 1 less non-con spot and then really 2 less because they'll have a scheduling agreement with the Big Ten and play 1 game against a Big Ten school every year, meaning less opportunities for the Big 12 and the ACC to play those schools. Well, now that's out the window. They haven't agreed on the 4 auto bids. They're not agreeing at all. A lot of the disagreement surrounds strength of schedule. They're going to be less apt to schedule each other. So now you've got more of an in. Joey McGuire stood up at Big 12 Media Days and said, hey, get us a home and home with LSU. You've got more of an opportunity to do that. Okay? You've got more of an opportunity to do that. I mean, hell, Big Ten schools right now look like they're just running from the hills of any competition in non-con. Indiana just backed out of a game with Virginia at the same time scheduling Kennesaw State. Like, that's what's going on in the Big Ten right now. So both of those things are very advantageous for the Big 12. Very advantageous. Now, another part of this report, as I keep reading, with the Big Ten continuing to support the 4AQ format and with the SEC unlikely to add a 9th conference game, the 12-team playoff will likely continue for the 2026 season. Quote, we're staying at 12 teams in 2026 unless something moves, a source says. Greg Sankey publicly at big SEC Media Days, rather on Monday, said we currently have a 12-team playoff with 5 conference champions. That could stay if we can't agree. I think there's this notion that there has to be this magic moment and something has to happen with expansion. Yeah, I mean, I feel like that's a little bit like the hot dog guy, Tim Robinson looking around like, well, we're all trying to find the guy who did this. I mean, it's been the SEC and Big Ten pushing 16-team expansion thing. Although, in fairness to Sankey, the Big Ten was more of the driving force behind that. So they're the ones that kind of gave everybody that idea, but he is right. you can just continue on with a 12-team playoff, which is a best of both worlds scenario for the Big 12. The longer the playoff stays at 12 teams the way it currently is, the more the Big 12 wins. Because what was the whole deal here? The Big 12 didn't want to sign up for 4-4-2-2 because you are codifying, you are solidifying that you are half the league of the SEC and Big 10. And there's no turning back from that. You will never be able to negotiate yourself out of that. Once you do it, toothpaste is out of the tube, you're done. Didn't want to do that. But you also, the problem with 5+11 is you're then opening up more at-large bids that will predominantly be gobbled up by the SEC and Big 10, and you fall further behind in terms of playoff participants. You're not dealing with that either if it's staying at 12. It's 5+7 then instead of 5+11. You're getting less lapped by the SEC and Big 10 while still not having to sign on the dotted line that you are half the conference of those two. That's a win-win, my friends. That's basically the best scenario that the Big 12 could hope for here, a best of both worlds. And that is good negotiating. Now, will it stay that way beyond 2026? We shall see. But you have now put a real fly in the ointment, caused a lot of disagreement between the Big 10 and the SEC. They are nowhere near on the same page at the moment, and you're buying time right now, kicking this can down the road where the current playoff format, you're fine. You're fine. Obviously, you still got to fight to get more respect. BYU should have absolutely been there in the at-large discussion last year. You got to fight to get more respect and still try to find a way to get two teams in. But this is merging both interests that you had really in 4-4-2-2 and 5+11 for the Big 12 and finding a way to make it work better than what it was looking like. So I'm just saying, chestnut checkers kind of thing. It really looks like this has been pretty well executed by Brett Yormark in terms of his positioning on this and what the outcome at this moment in time is and looks like it is going to be on the playoff. You've got the two big bad bullies fighting. You've pitted their egos against each other instead of letting them with all their power and leverage just pull everything forward in one direction that's going the opposite way you want it to go. You have opened up more scheduling opportunities against these Power 2 leagues, which are important for your schools. Joey McGuire just said so behind a microphone at your own media days last week. And you have given yourself a best of both worlds playoff scenario with things continuing the way that they are. I like this. I like this as a Big 12 fan. If you're an ACC fan, you should like this. Anybody outside of the Big 10 or SEC should like this. And if you're the SEC, you're probably mostly fine. I know they're a little disgruntled with how this past year went, and truly that will tell the tale of how long we'll stay at 12 is what happens with the at-large process this year. If the SEC seems satisfied by whatever changes they're trying to make, then maybe they would give in and just say, okay, fine, and make the change the Big 10 wants to see, and everybody will move forward. But if not, I mean, the SEC is going to continue to sit there and say, yeah, I don't know about this. We don't want to go to 9 conference games because look at how we're being treated in the at-large selection process. So that could continue to kick the can down the road. We shall see. Big 10 seems particularly upset about where things are at right now, but genuinely, I like some folks in the Big 10. I like some Big 10 fans, but I care 0% about them being upset right now. 0%. 0.0%. Let's get to some super chats. Here we go. We've got Clint with another Big 12 hot take. Clint says, hot take, Baylor will fill up their stadium for every home game. Baylor has got an excellent home schedule this year. We'll pull it up because you make a great point there. Baylor has an awesome home schedule. They've got Auburn, first of all, right out of the chute. I would imagine that game's going to be pretty filled up. They've got Arizona State at home. Prime Big 12 contender, defending champs. They've got K-State at home. I mean, the first 3 of the first 4 home games are Auburn, Arizona State, and K-State. It's about as good as you can get from a season ticket value standpoint. Yeah, there's a game with Samford mixed in there. But Auburn, Arizona State, and K-State. Come on, man. You've got UCF, who, media poll, unofficial media poll, they were picked last. But then you have Utah at home. Then there's a game at the end of the year against Houston. And if Houston is what Clint thinks they will be, that would be a big game too. But the games right now that you look at the home schedule and say those will be bangers. Auburn, Arizona State, K-State, Utah. I mean, Utah is the betting favorite in some markets. K-State was picked by the coaches and the unofficial media poll to win the Big 12. Arizona State's the defending champ. Auburn is Auburn from the SEC and what some people consider a dark horse SEC contender this year. So it's a tremendous home schedule. Big 12 needs fuller stadiums across the board. SEC has this advantage. Well, Big 12 just has smaller stadiums across the board as well. But yeah, Baylor's the type of place that needs to be filled up, needs to be better. Look, Baylor football, when it was, you hate to say it, a lot of bad things happened, but the Art Briles era at the peak of it, Baylor football was a really, really great entity. Would love to see Baylor get back to something like that, get the fans back in there for sure. For sure. Rise and Shout. What's up, Rise and Shout? Thank you, by the way, Clint. Rise and Shout's guess for best conference game this year is Farmageddon. So the best conference game will be the first conference game and the one that's played before week 1 even comes around. We've got week 0, Farmageddon. Or are you saying, Rise and Shout, that you agree with the Big 12 coaches who were polled by Brett McMurphy, who said K-State and Iowa State would match up in the Big 12 championship game to get Farmageddon round 2? The stress levels for your boy here, if K-State and Iowa State were playing a round 2 in Arlington for a Big 12 championship and spot in the playoff potentially, oh boy, I would be a stressed individual, ladies and gentlemen. I would be a stressed individual about that game, but it would be fun. Obviously, it would be awesome. Okay. Thank you, Rise and Shout. That's good. I'm guessing that's kind of a hot take here that you're submitting. I would say that's warm. It's definitely warm. I think, I heard Josh Pate say he picks Arizona State, Texas Tech as Big 12 game of the year. That's absolutely on the list. That's definitely in the mix. I wouldn't argue if you think that is going to be Big 12 game of the year. I mean, if you're going by the fact that the betting markets think Utah is the conference favorite and K-State has been picked by coaches and unofficial media polls to win the Big 12, K-State at Utah toward the end of the year would be a huge game. You've definitely got some options, but I like it, Rise and Shout. I like it. David, good to see you, David. Thank you for being here. David says Kirby Smart came out and said 9 conference games is good for money, good for fans, good for TV, but bad for college football playoff spots. They can schedule big SEC teams. Vandy and the Sooners for wins. Roll Tide. LOL. Yeah, you're right. Ask good old Kalen DeBoer how that goes. Kalen DeBoer, by the way, I do think it was funny. People were getting after him, and I think this is like, look, I am going to join in chuckling a bit here at Kalen DeBoer, but I also respect what he is saying when he was touting, hey, look, man, we have Florida State and Wisconsin this year on our non-con schedule. Like, we're not ducking anybody. But people pointed out those two teams combined to go 7-17 last year. So, yeah, I mean, right now it's, maybe not the best timing for that comment, but in general, I'm going to, guys, I will give Alabama respect for scheduling Florida State and Wisconsin. I will give them the respect that is probably due and deserved for scheduling those games. That they deserve that. It's not their fault that Florida State had an otherworldly terrible year last year, and Wisconsin's just kind of been blah. Someone floated out. Where was I listening to that? And I heard it the other day. They were like, is Luke Fickell going to wind up back at Cincinnati? How about that? How about that for a Big 12 hot take? Luke Fickell back at Cincinnati next year, gets canned at Wisconsin. Scott Satterfield continues to flounder, and since he gets rid of Satterfield, I know that there's I've heard people talk about like buyout issues there or whatever. But if Luke Fickell is there, like, hey, I'll be your Scott Frost, I'll be your Rich Rod, let me come back. Huh? Cincinnati, who says no? Everybody's doing it. Everybody's doing it in the Big 12 right now. Jump on board, my friends. Jump on board. I would very much enjoy that, to have Luke Fickell back in the league. Anyway, I'm getting way off topic here. Look, Kirby Smart's right. I mean, it's 9 conference games would definitely be good for TV. I mean, TV would love that, which in turn means it's good for money. And it's definitely good for the fans. Like, everybody wants to watch those teams play each other. But for college football playoff spots, I mean, I do understand what he's saying. Like, you're just going to take more losses for your teams there instead of a non-conference week where you can mostly win. Half the teams that play the extra conference game will lose, which means you are coming up with what? They've got 16 teams. You got 8 more losses for SEC teams that will come out of that. Simple math would tell you it is actually bad for playoff spots there. So I understand why everybody is at the point that they are at. And that's kind of why back to my original point on all this, it's brilliant by Brett Yormark. If he kind of knew where everything was going to shake out, where everybody would stand on this, it's kind of brilliant. Like, hey, I know the SEC is not going to give in because they're not stupid. They're not going to wipe out more at-large bids for themselves by throwing losses on them. And the Big Ten is going to say, well, now you've got an unfair advantage with that. We're not going to just bow down to you because that's not a good move for us long-term to anoint you as the full leaders and not just have us as co-leaders. So let me just pit you guys against each other a little bit here. Let me just do that. Thank you, David. Appreciate you. Daniel, what's up, Daniel? Daniel's got a hot take. Daniel says, my hot take, West Virginia goes 5-4 in conference play, 8-4 overall. The schedule isn't as bad as people think. I think that's a fairly hot take, but not scorching. And it's really interesting, Daniel. I was talking to a West Virginia fan on Twitter. I never did go back to see. I'm not on Twitter as much as I used to be, guys, so I don't see quite as much of the stuff that gets tweeted at me. So I didn't see the response after I went back and forth, but I had tweeted something about, or no, someone had listened to the show, I think, and said, hey, I don't think you understand with Rich Rod, because I had said, look, with the Jake Retzloff thing, Retzloff makes more sense to me at Oklahoma State because there's more sense of urgency. Mike Gundy just took a reduced salary contracts change, right? His contract gets tweaked. He's taking less salary. He's on thin ice is more or less the idea there after last season going 3-9. He needs to win. He needs a quarterback now. West Virginia, first year of Rich Rod, you're going to have a little bit more in terms of a leash, from fans, administration, et cetera. And a West Virginia fan said, I don't think you're interpreting that right. I think 50% of our fan base is expecting big results right away because of the money and resources there. And I would imagine, I don't think he said this, but I would imagine because we're tired of being a 500 program, which is what we were under Neil Brown. And I was like, okay, well, I understand that. I don't think it's fair, but I understand where you're coming from. I don't think it's fair when you're turning over that much of the roster. And again, it is just year one to expect to go compete near the top of the league. But 8-4, let's see what the schedule. You're going to beat Robert Morris. You should beat Ohio, though that is at Ohio. Ask Iowa State about that. Pitt, should have won the Pitt game last year already. And this one will be at home. That's definitely winnable. But let's see. What else on the schedule do I think? At Kansas, winnable, but that's going to be tough. Utah at home, that's going to be tough. At BYU, that's going to be tough, but maybe winnable if things really go poorly with the quarterback. At UCF, yeah, probably should win that game, but it is on the road. That'd be a third game you should win. Colorado at home. Look, sorry, Buff fans. Maybe I'll get bombed in the comments. I think that's very winnable if we want to call that like 4. At Arizona State, home against Texas Tech into the year, that's tough. I don't know. I see 4 games that are like pretty winnable there. And then another at Kansas, at BYU, Utah, TCU is at home in there. At Houston, I did skip over that, didn't I? At Houston, there's another 3 or 4 that seem fairly winnable. And I would think that you're going to lose. I would think that you're going to lose to Tech. I would think you're going to lose at Arizona State. I think you're going to lose to TCU and Utah. There's your 4. Or TCU and BYU, rather, since that game's on the road. There's your 4 that would be. You'd have to win all the kind of toss-up games, I guess, there to get to that. I don't think it's totally crazy, but I do think it is still qualifies as a hot take. But I appreciate the faith there, Daniel. I probably overanalyzed that a little bit, people. Sorry about that. Daniel, thank you, though. You got your money's worth, my friend. Alan, what's up, Alan? Thank you for being here. Appreciate you, Alan. Alan says, John, who is the genius behind the Big Ten and the SEC restricting preseason games to each other? Not sure what sports fan is dying to see classic matchups like Minnesota, Mississippi State, or Rutgers, Vandy. Well, we do get Texas, Ohio State this year, Alan. So it's not like everything has been totally stripped down to the studs with that. They do, and I think that's been a part of the message from the SEC this week is like, hey, if you guys want more of that, then make sure that the at-large selection process is totally tailored towards us. Or the Big Ten would say, hey, if you guys want more of that, just get with us on the 4-4-2-2 thing. We'll have it every year. We'll have matchups like that because we won't be afraid to do it. Hey, Rutgers, Vandy, low key. Rutgers, Vandy, that could be, if you're a college football fan who knows ball, that could be a fun one. Diego Pavia, Rutgers has been a little bit better with another bounce back head coach, right? Another bounce back head coach at Rutgers with Schiano. So maybe it's not quite as bad as you're making it out to be there, Alan. Just a thought. But we're at least not going to get like a scheduling agreement where they'll be playing every year and be, less afraid to have their big brands play each other the way that things are going right now, Alan. The way that they are going right now. Anyway, appreciate you, Alan. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your comments as always. Thank you for your support of the show. Guys, please like the video, subscribe to the channel. Make sure you're subscribed to the Open for Business Big 12 newsletter. If you would like to see the Big 12 Anonymous Player Survey, you're getting that all week. Already started off with the toughest place to play in the Big 12. And not only did one stadium totally run away with it, dominated the vote. First place got 13, second place got 5. If you're curious about that, but we had some incredible quotes about it. A mascot getting a bunch of love, and a different stadium that was not in the top 2 taking multiple shots for how rated R the commentary was from the stands. I believe the direct quote was unchristian fans from one of the players there. So you can read all about that at the Open for Business Big 12 newsletter, ofbnews.com. That's ofbnews.com to get subscribed. You can also click the link in the description of this video. Okay. We're pretty deep in here to only be on the second official topic. But if you were skeptical that nothing was ever going to come out of Washington on college sports, it looks like you're going to be wrong, my friend. At least if you trust this CBS News report. And even Greg Sankey's comments about all this suggest to me that the Big 12 is having a major impact here. So I think it's if you're somebody that's Team Cody Campbell, I think you need to pull up a seat and pay attention here. Now, I'm going to preface this by saying the lights just flickered here as a thunderstorm starts to pelt us here in Kansas City. So if my power goes out and the stream cuts off, you guys know why. Hopefully we make it through. Remember the Presidential Commission on College Sports? May it rest in peace. What a time that was. Looked like Nick Saban and Cody Campbell, at least according to reports, were going to head this thing up. Now they're reporting that USA Today article last week seems to indicate that it's killed, but that President Trump instead will have just a point man on this. And the insinuation was in the article that the point man is going to be Texas Tech multi-billionaire oil tycoon Cody Campbell. Should be great news for the Big 12 if he's getting major influence over this. You can check out the video on 365 Sports recently, his interview with them. He did a great interview. He also went on with Andy and Ari on 3. He did a couple of good interviews where he was pushing his message like, hey, I'm trying to save Olympic sports. I'm trying to save women's sports. I'm trying to get more money for everybody involved. Use the Sports Broadcasting Act. Pool your TV rights together. SEC and Big Ten, like big brands, will still have advantages. I'm not trying to socialize college football, make it a socialist system. That's his main message here, what he has been trying to get across. Keep that in mind for later on when I read you Greg Sankey's comments about the report that came out regarding President Trump and what may be happening here. So we seem to have some movement, instead of the Presidential Commission getting something done. This week, we've had a report about a bill working its way through Congress. And now this was from CBS News. And it says, new tonight, President Trump intends to sign an executive order in the coming days establishing national standards for the NCAA's name, image, and likeness program that had reaped millions of dollars in revenue for top college athletes. Multiple people familiar with his plans tell Jennifer Jacobs and me. So really what this appears to be, now we don't know for sure. It has not come through for sure. But what this appears to be is your executive order that would supersede all the individual state laws that have been made up around NIL, that were all kind of designed to help out the teams in your state be able to gain some kind of competitive advantage, some kind of edge with NIL rules, regulations. I mean, we've seen things like, I believe it was the state of Missouri, that at one point it was you could start paying NIL to kids still in high school if they were going to come to, say, Mizzou or, whatever the school might be. That's obviously a competitive advantage for a school in your state. And then different states could have different laws. And that's, it's all very, very college sports, right? All of a sudden we're going to the state courthouse to make sure that we can get an advantage there instead of buying, Eric Dickerson a Trans Am. That's how you're doing it these days now in college athletics. This would get everybody on the same page. And this is something that, like, I think you'd be hard pressed to find many detractors, I think, really to this. At least the main players in the college sports space, like I think Greg Sankey and Cody Campbell would definitely agree on this. I think Tony Petitti and Cody Campbell would definitely agree on standardizing. Everybody has to follow the guidelines set by the actual organization here, CSC, NCAA, whatever it might be, that you got to follow these rules for NIL, and your individual state thing will not apply here. Okay. Now, another point that Sankey made is like, hey, we do have to see this actually come through and become official, which is fair. So Sankey was asked about this at SEC Media Days, and he said, quote, there have been reports about a commission and executive order before. You actually have to see if something happens, and then if something happens, what is included. I don't have any inside information about what generated those reports late last evening. So Sankey is still kind of like in wait and see mode on this. He's not going to get too far down this rabbit hole before knowing that it's for sure a thing, which totally fair. That is totally fair, because there has been a lot of talk, a lot of chatter about this. And the latest thing that we saw come through was the presidential commission, which then sort of fell apart. Now, I will also say, well, maybe it was some people just overstating what Nick Saban's involvement was going to possibly be. We very quickly had Saban going on the Feinbaum show being like, hey, I don't know that I need to be involved in this. I don't know that we even need this thing. The SEC kind of tried to shut that down pretty quickly. So they may have had something to do with that not happening. Maybe not. There was also geopolitical issues at hand for everybody in the White House to deal with. And so that is why you do have to kind of take it with a grain of salt. I'm with Sankey on that. I definitely am. But that's not the only thing Greg Sankey had to say in reaction to this. And this is where I think you really need to pay attention. Okay. So here's another quote from Sankey. Quote, it's not a secret. I had a chance to visit with the president along with Pete Bavacqua, the athletics director at Notre Dame. We met and played golf at Bedminster, and his interest is real. My takeaway, he wants to be supportive of college athletics. He wants to make sure it's sustainable, the Olympic program and the Olympic development. Okay. Put a bookmark in that. Work that's done on college campuses was on his mind. The support of women's athletics was on his mind. But having some kind of real boundaries, and we've been in active conversations, and I talked to members of Congress yesterday as they look at a bill in the House of Representatives, went through a subcommittee markup. This is all the gobbledygook. I think those congressional activities are still a real priority for us. All right. Let me focus on a couple of sentences here. They came basically back to back in these quotes. My takeaway, he being President Trump, wants to be supportive of college athletics, make sure it's sustainable, the Olympic program and Olympic development. What's done on college campuses was on his mind. The support of women's athletics was on his mind. These are the exact same talking points that Cody Campbell was rolling out there in his media tour of sorts at Big 12 Media Days, the couple of interviews that he did there. That's what he was talking about. He's saying, look, I'm not trying to just lift up Texas Tech here. I want to make sure that we don't get caught up in an arms race where a bunch of Olympic sports are going to be cut at the expense of football. And because all of a sudden you have to revenue share and you're maybe going to be trying to go over the top of that with more NIL. Like, I know this is a strain on all of you right now, and it will continue to be more so. So let's pool our TV rights together. It generates, again, the report in the USA Today article was that it would double the amount of money that's there total for TV rights in college football. Let's do that. There will be more money to go around for everybody at all these athletic departments, and we can maintain our Olympic model, women's college sports, because Cody Campbell is a very firm believer in that one of the best things that happened in his life was playing college sports. So Greg Sankey is saying, hey, this is what President Trump is talking about. These are the same talking points that Cody Campbell is pushing. You guys see where I'm going with this, man? I keep telling you, I think it's a very, very underrated good thing that you've got Cody Campbell right in the president's ear. And it seems like the talking points are coming straight from Cody right now. Let's see where this goes, ladies and gentlemen. Let's see where this goes. terms of creating a system that hopefully is sustainable for everybody and not just something that will push forward only the Big Ten and the SEC. Something that can lift all the boats out there, get the rising tide to lift all boats. Okay. So I like that, actually. Who would have thought that? I'd be sitting here saying, man, have you guys seen these Sankey quotes? They are awesome. Love it. Love hearing from Greg Sankey. Love that guy. Thank you, Greg. Thank you. K-State Scott with a hot take. K-State Scott says Big 12 sweeps the SEC and Big 10 in non-conference matchups. Well, Scott, I don't even have to know all of them to say that that's a really hot take, because Oklahoma State has to go to Autzen Stadium to take on the Oregon Ducks in September. And that's a hot take. That's a hot take to say Oklahoma State is going to win that game. I sure hope that you're right, Scott. I would freaking love it. That would be a massive game for respect for the Big 12. Imagine if I could come on here and start saying, hey, guys, remember when the team that finished last in the Big 12 and winless in the Big 12 last year in a league that everybody said was no good and could only get one team in? Yeah, remember when that team went and won on the road at the team who was the number 1 overall seed in the playoff last year, Oregon? Do we remember when that happened? Because I remember when that happened. Pepperidge Farm remembers. South Park reference for you. That would be great. This would also include Auburn losing at Baylor, which would be wonderful. These are all things I would love to happen. I know that Arizona State plays Mississippi State. I would think that ASU is going to win that. They were just rolling Mississippi State until a late charge made that game look closer than it actually was. I think they should probably win that too. Those are games that I know off the top of my head. I'd have to think on if there are more. But because of the big one there is the importance of Oklahoma State, Oregon, Scott. That would be a huge one if the Big 12 got it to go their way. So it's a good hot take. If you have any more to work in, you've got like 10 minutes left. I've got one more topic for you. So 10 minutes or so. Like the video, subscribe to the channel. Appreciate everybody who does that. Open for Business Big 12 newsletter. You can sign up at ofbnews.com if you want to get in on the anonymous player survey. Find out later this week, tomorrow or Friday. Not totally sure if it'll drop tomorrow afternoon or Friday morning, but you will get the players pick for Big 12 champ. So if you want to know who the players think is winning the Big 12 this year, sign up at ofbnews.com for the Open for Business Big 12 newsletter. Now over 4,600 subscribers. So thank you. A lot of people really enjoyed hopping on for the anonymous player survey this week. Okay. So Major College Football Voice raised this question this week. Will Nick Saban coach in the Big 12? Will Nick Saban coach in the Big 12? Now, had you asked this question just 1 week ago, 7 days ago, that would have been like a record scratch. Like, what the hell are you talking about, John? That is, get this out of here. Totally fantasy la la land. But it's not quite as much anymore, because earlier this week, we got a report from Saban's former QB himself, Greg McElroy, that Saban has interest in coming back to coach. So could this really happen? Could Nick Saban coach in the Big 12? Because, as I mentioned, one major voice in the college sports space at least floated the idea of it happening. All right. So here was the report from Greg McElroy, again, former Alabama quarterback, now at ESPN. He said, quote, "A very much in the know person that I have a lot of respect for and have spent a lot of time around and just really, really admire. They seem to think Nick Saban is not done coaching. He's pretty adamant that he thinks Nick Saban will be coaching again." So look, Greg McElroy is a pretty, I respect McElroy a lot. I think he does a good job. He is a very respected guy in the media space, at least my perception is. And he is certainly not like a hot take artist. That is not a guy who's out there just engagement farming or trying to drum up a bunch of controversy. So because of that, I mean, I put some legitimate stock in his judgment here to trust this person enough to actually go and say that. That's a fascinating story. Now, obviously, that's going to generate a ton of buzz in SEC circles because of the obvious. Not only was he at Alabama, but Alabama's replacement had a pretty rocky first year. I don't think Alabama fans are sending a bunch of Christmas cards to Kalen DeBoer after losing 3 games, including to Vandy and a terrible Oklahoma team and missing the playoff. So that kicks it into an even different gear, right? Wow. Kalen DeBoer struggling. Nick Saban maybe wants to come back. Could he be back at Alabama? Lots of ways that this discussion can go. Now, Nick Saban is 73, so keep that in mind. God bless him. He looks much younger than that. Nick Saban looks like he's in like his mid-60s. He's actually 73. Maybe I would say like late 50s, early 60s sometimes when I see Saban, but he is in his 70s. Lane Kiffin was talking about him this week at SEC Media Days, and he said, man, it's a shame that he's not coaching because he's still just too sharp to not be doing it. And Lane even kind of threw some shade at the media like, hey, no offense to you guys, but his mind is still too good to be doing that. Thanks, Lane. But fair enough. Anyway, got me thinking. Well, first I'll give credit to Ari Wasserman at On 3 because it got him thinking. And then it got me thinking, what about a LeBron-esque move here? No, not go coach at Miami, not take his talents to South Beach. It's what happened after that, right? Remember, LeBron then went back to Cleveland. He went back home. He went back home to win a title for the hometown team. And what if Nick Saban decided he wanted to go back home to win one for the hometown team? Here is what Ari Wasserman said. He said that question at West Virginia, and Rich Rod is the man I like. But could you imagine him at a Big 12 school like West Virginia, where he grew up reviving the Mountaineers and then making the playoff? How cool would that be? How cool would that be indeed? Rich Rod Nick Saban going back to where he grew up, West Virginia, to get West Virginia to the playoff. Now, they're stopping it short at the playoff, but we're talking about the greatest coach of all time in college football. Why not get to the championship game? Why not win a national championship? What about we say Nick Saban comes back and wins a national championship at West Virginia? I'm just saying, I am not some crazy Big 12 homer that's like, oh, the Big 12 could definitely win a national championship. It does not seem very possible at all right now. However, if there's anybody that could do it, wouldn't you say maybe he'd be the greatest college coach of all time in Nick Saban? Wouldn't you say he'd be the guy? Nick Saban, born in Fairmont, West Virginia, won the 1968 West Virginia state championship in football as the quarterback. Yeah. How about that? Wikipedia research that I did on Nick Saban before the show today. Coming back to the home state to take over the Mountaineers. Now, I know there was some discussion about this for a short little while before West Virginia brought somebody else back home in Rich Rod. And if Nick Saban really were going to get back in coaching, really had that itch and really thought that this would be a job that he would want to take over, why wouldn't he have just done it this past offseason? All fair enough questions, okay? But Ari Wasserman did raise this one. And maybe, it feels to me like Nick Saban does not love, and understandably so, the current landscape of college athletics. Now, NIL was like totally uncapped, out of control. Maybe if we go another year or two and things are reined in a bit and it's a little bit less chaotic, maybe that entices him to come back. Now, the sad thing here for West Virginia fans is that if this scenario were ever to play out, probably means that things did not go well with Rich Rod, right? Probably means that things did not go well with the first prodigal son coming back home and returning. So the timing on this just seems like impossible. But thinking about that, not just for West Virginia fans, which obviously that would be very cool. It would be a massive opportunity for West Virginia if that were to happen. But think about the Big 12 then. You've got Deion and Nick Saban in the same conference. Like the novelty value of that and the eyeballs that would be on the league from that alone would be great. And think about naming rights here. Think about how much money you could milk out of Aflac if you had Nick Saban and Deion in the same conference coaching against each other. They could just literally make an Aflac commercial while they're on the field at the same time playing each other, West Virginia and Colorado. If you're going to get naming rights to the conference, the Aflac 12 would probably be a thing in very short order if you've got Nick Saban and Deion Sanders coaching against each other in the same conference. Man, nobody, if Nick Saban came back and got West Virginia even just to the playoff, could anybody ever touch that resume as being the greatest of all time? And that's not a slam to West Virginia's program. Obviously, there are the resources there to make the playoff. But if he could get there, do some damage, pull a 2022 TCU, get to the title game or something, it'd be an untouchable, greatest of all time resume for Nick Saban. So, look, I'm just saying. If that were to happen too, then you would have Belichick, Dion, and Saban all coaching outside the SEC and the Big Ten. Assuming this would happen in a few years, Belichick would still be there, which seems like a hell of an assumption at this point. But that would be awesome too, to get that much coaching firepower outside of the Big Ten and the SEC. So sign me up is all I'm saying. Okay, sign me up for this. West Virginia's already ponied up a ton of resources for Rich Rod. How much do you think they would pony up for Nick Saban? Like, Pat McAfee's given a lot of money. I know Rich Rod is his dude. You think Pat could find it in his heart to find a few more shekels if they got the greatest coach of all time there? I would love to see it. Look, someone send this to Nick. Clip it, send it to Nick. He's got my endorsement. Nick, if you were on the fence, if you're wondering how people would feel about this publicly, this is one very public endorsement from a micro influencer. All right, from one micro influencer to another. Nick, please do it. Please do it. All right. Let's see. Did I get to all the super chats? I think that I did. Do I see any other Big 12 hot takes? I don't. Oh, I see Jeremy beat me to the Aflac joke. Good job there, Jeremy. No. All right. Well, thank you all for being here tonight. Please like the video. We made it. We survived the storm. It's still raining and storming out there, but we did not lose power, even though it flickered. Proud of us. A lot of intestinal fortitude shown on the show tonight by everybody all the way around. Like the video, subscribe to the channel on your way out the door. Subscribe to the Open for Business Big 12 newsletter. You want that Big 12 anonymous survey, anonymous player survey coming out within the next 36 hours. You're going to get the pick from the players to win the Big 12. All right, everybody. John-Kurtz-4 on Venmo if you would like to leave me a question or comment there if you didn't get to see the show live. And I will address your question or comment to start the next show. With that, have a great rest of your week, ladies and gentlemen. Be safe, and I will talk to you soon.